Hello, everybody. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Susanna DeBaca, and I am the president of Business Publications Corporation. And I want to thank you for joining us today as we begin our 4th year of Fearless, if you can believe it. Our program today is the first Fearless Focus program in our 3-part series for this year. If it's the first time that you're joining us, we are very glad that you are here. As you know, here at Fearless, we tackle big topics that affect women and society. We like to look at the trends and the data, asking you directly what you think, and then bringing all of you together for dialogue. And as you're going to hear shortly, today we are going to be addressing the unique financial barriers that women face. This topic resonates with me in particular, as I spent a lot of my early career in financial services. Back then, when I started, it was a very male-dominated career, and I saw pay inequity in full force. This also seems to be a very important topic to you, our readers. In our recent Fearless survey, which you'll be hearing about today, only 20% of respondents said that pay inequity was a minor issue. So 80% are very, very focused on this. And then I think in a very timely turn of events, it seems as if pretty much everyone is outraged by what I'll call the Caitlin wage gap. And I think you know what I'm talking about. We all learned this week that Caitlin Clark's $77,000 salary starting out in the WNBA is really kind of a travesty when compared to the $10.5 million starting salary for the top NBA pick. How do you guys feel about that? Drop it in the chat. I think it's a great way to be thinking about the discussion. I'm excited to dive into the conversation today. I would like to thank all of the companies who supported our Powered by Women section. We are very grateful for your sponsorship of this important work. And now, without any further ado, I am pleased to introduce Emily Wood, our special projects editor. Emily, nice to see you.
Thank you, Susanna, and hello, everyone. I'm Emily Wood, the Special Projects Editor at the Business Record. We are excited to have you join us for the first Fearless Focus of 2024. Our goal with Fearless is to empower Iowa women to succeed in work and life, and to do that, we believe in the power of inspiration and connection. We're focusing on financial empowerment today, which has been one of the most important topics that we've covered. We know that there are specific financial barriers that adversely affect women, whether it be pay inequity, loss of income due to family leave, or lack of confidence in financial planning. Some of these barriers are systemic, while others occur on an individual level. We've asked today's speakers to talk about these issues and what we might do to address them. In last Friday's edition of the Business Record, we published coverage from our 2024 survey on the status of gender equity in Iowa, which Susanna mentioned. This year, we heard from about 350 Iowans. And a question related to financial challenges was pretty telling about the adversity that women face. We asked respondents which, if any, of these tasks related to finances are a challenge for you, and they could select all that applied to them. And when we broke the results down by respondents who identified as women or non-binary and those who identified as men, we saw some discrepancies. When it came to maintaining enough money for emergencies, 31% of those who are women or non-binary said that this was a challenge, while only 4.6% of men did. On creating and maintaining a budget, 23% of respondents who identified as women or non-binary selected this, but only 5% of men did. When it came to investing your money, 44% of the women and non-binary respondents said that this was a challenge for them, while only 9% of men did. On planning for retirement, 40% of the women and non-binary respondents said this was a challenge, and just 23% of the men did. And then only a quarter of women or non-binary respondents told us that none of these were challenges for them, but 68% of the men said that none of these were. There were also some who selected other, and they cited reasons like living on Social Security or college funding, being financially independent, children-related expenses, inflation, and budgeting with a partner. We thought these results were pretty compelling and fodder for a great conversation today. So we'll be talking to some experts who have expertise in areas like workplace benefits, helping women business owners, financial planning, and salary negotiation. We have a great lineup to inspire us today. With us, we have Kara Hoogensen, Senior Vice President and Head of Workplace Benefits in the Benefits and Protection Division at Principal Financial Group. We have Marcie Ordaz, Executive Director at the Lift Women's Foundation in the Quad Cities. We have Sonya Sellmeyer, Consumer Advocate in the Iowa Insurance Division, and Ashlee Vieregger, Senior Lead Advisor at Foster Group, and Michele Williams, Associate Professor of Management and Entrepreneurship at the University of Iowa Tippie College of Business. So I've asked each of our speakers to start off with a question about telling us one financial barrier that adversely affects women and how they think the business community plays a role in addressing it. So Kara, we'll go to you first.
Fantastic. Thank you, Emily, and really honored to be part of this particular group of women to have this really important conversation. So first, to start with, I think it's important to note it's not just one thing that is impacting the current situation, and I think we'll cover a lot of different topics as we think at Principal about how we can best support our small and mid-sized business customers, as well as the individual customers that we work with here in the United States. We do a lot of primary research. And so to support and really even put an exclamation point behind, Emily, what you just shared, we also have some research that shares similar findings on a national level. And specifically, we find that 68% of women relative to 80% of men feel financially secure. Well, what do we mean when we say financially secure? We mean they feel comfortable that they can get a loan. They feel comfortable that they can get a mortgage. They feel comfortable that they can make investment decisions, whether that be in an employer-sponsored retirement plan or outside of that kind of framework. So there is absolutely, a discrepancy here. Employers play a big role. Employers are the most trusted institution in the United States. And so from my perspective, the role that employers play in helping their talent, particularly their female talent, make sure that they understand what they have access to and provide the education and support. To really get super specific around one of the challenges that we focus on at Principal, that really is the income protection gap. Emily, you mentioned in your opening comments that the childcare responsibilities, being able to take time off, whether that be for one's individual illness or sickness or to care for a loved one, is a major issue. If there's not an income stream coming in, you as an individual may or may not be in a position to be able to do what in your heart of hearts you want to do in providing care for another or for oneself. So one of the movements here in the States is to see, and we are seeing it happen, more states embrace paid family medical leave programs and more employers that are supplementing those programs, or in states where those programs don't exist, offer short-term disability coverage for purposes of people at least taking care of their own illness and injury and having an income stream. The fact is there's 5 panelists here on this event today. Odds are at least one of us is going to go through a period of time during our career where we're unable to work for a lengthy period of time. And it can be a very big challenge. So that's a big effort, is to make sure that those programs are put in place and that it's a good sponsorship, or a good partnership, I should say, between government and the private sector to help make that happen.
Great, thank you. And we'll go to Marcie next.
Also excited to be here and to participate in such an important conversation. Over the last few years, I've had the opportunity to move into a career in nonprofit, working with small business women entrepreneurs, and also taking the time for myself to really jump in and be better about my learning and education around financial stability. And one of the things that I recognized not too long ago was the barrier for women to maintain an almost equal, I'll say, opportunity to have retirement funds built. And, when I was doing some more research, when I first heard some statistics from a peer of mine, it just kind of blew me away. And I didn't think about, the time I took off when I had my kids. I felt so fortunate to take a year off for each of my two girls. And then now I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's 1 year of retirement money tucking away, plus match programs that I just missed out on. But I also wanted to be with my children. And so when I think about those, I think there are opportunities that, when we can do that and able to do that, it hurts us in the long run as women. Statistically, we're the ones who are taking those long leave absences to care for family members, to care for children. We've seen it heightened after the pandemic. The US Department of Labor says the impact of taking time off for a woman is a 15% difference in wages lost compared to what men are earning. And that's on top of wage gaps already. So I really feel like as a business community, there has to be some sort of program or first acknowledgement of that loss for women when planning for retirement, and really identify how can we fill those gaps, not for us working today, but for the time that we are ready to retire, if we can retire. I joke with my kids all the time and I said, hey, there's not going to be anything left for you when I'm gone, and I'm probably going to work till I die, but I'm teaching them things that I'm learning in my 40s that I wish I had known, so that way they're not in the same situation that I'm in. um, and so I just think as a business community, we've got to all do better, men and women, of just identifying that and figuring out how do we build programs around retirement planning for our future.
Thank you. And Sonya, we'll go to you next.
Thank you, Emily. I appreciate it. Thanks to everyone for allowing me to be here and be a part of this vital discussion. And thanks for sharing those polling results at the beginning there, because the Iowa Insurance Division did a similar poll back in 2020 during the pandemic, and we kind of found similar results. We polled, I think it was approximately 350 women, Iowa women, and we asked them, how is your household financial situation? What do you want to know more about? And I guess I wasn't surprised to learn they wanted to know more about retirement planning and investments, because there is information out there lacking for women. And so we got that information, and I started digging around into it a little bit more and found out that we also, women and men, spend a lot of time worrying about our finances while we're at work. I found a study by PricewaterhouseCoopers that was conducted in January of 2023 that found that 50% of all workers spend 3 or more hours per week dealing with their finances or worrying about their personal finances while at work. And that amount, 3 hours a week for 56%, blew me away. That's a lot of lost productivity while we're at our workplace. So, my answer to this question is I think employers can do a lot to help with the financial literacy efforts, and have that as a benefit in our workplace, offering that empowerment and confidential financial wellness program to their employees as a benefit. For men and women. But as the poll showed, I think maybe women need it more, and our poll showed that as well, that women felt that they were behind on that financial literacy curve. So I really do think that financial education, with the support of our employers, with coaching, webinars, online tools, would provide flexibility for different learning styles as well. And just translates into a healthier workplace, happier and productive employees.
Thank you. And Ashlee?
Thank you, Emily. It's an honor to be here with my fellow panelists, and I couldn't agree more about the critical nature of the conversation that we're having today. So thank you to the Fearless team for hosting us. A few notable roadblocks I think that women face financially, and I see this every day in the work that I do with individual client families and households. One is earnings, right? Pay inequality, inequity persists, and that's just one part of the puzzle. Equal work, equal compensation is not the reality that a lot of women experience today. And a decade's worth of research by McKinsey & Company found that women are also overrepresented in low-wage occupations. So it's not just a matter of equal work for equal pay, but women occupy a lot of low-wage occupations in comparison with men of a similar education level of attainment. So yes, income is a big deal, but there's also, I think, a confidence gap that persists. And certainly the survey results that you highlighted at the beginning of our time today about gender equity in the state of Iowa show that women do feel a lot less confident about their financial situation than men do. And so there's something that the business community can do to help remedy these income related challenges. And then there's also the question of what can we do individually to feel more confident. So with respect to the income related challenges, companies and businesses need to continue to promote women in equal measure to men, to fix kind of this leaky talent pipeline that persists, meaning women, when they start in entry-level positions, there are fewer and fewer who advance to manager or senior manager or executive level. At every level, there's a leaky pipeline there. And so by promoting and investing in career development opportunities, and particularly for women of color who are very underrepresented in executive leadership, we have to invest in those training, development, and leadership opportunities, in addition to promoting equitably across gender lines. And then on the confidence piece, I feel like a big part of that disparity and disconnect happens because a lot of us simply are not comfortable talking about money and finances. It's the last great taboo in American conversation. We'd rather talk about death. We'd rather talk about politics. We'd rather talk about religion than how to have a money conversation on what an appropriate salary would be, or how to engage in a negotiation when you're approaching a new career opportunity, or how much you should be saving or investing, or the shame of carrying significant debt, which can just feel overwhelming to a lot of women. So we have to be more comfortable talking about that and breaking down that taboo so that we can gain confidence. Because the research is clear, when we talk about these topics with the other trusted people in our lives, both women and men, confidence in our financial decisions only grows. It doesn't decrease. So I am very focused on breaking that, what we'll call money silence taboo, in the work that I do with client families across generations. Because if we can't talk about this comfortably as adults, what message or inspiration or education are we modeling for the next generation? We want them to be more equipped with these skills and have more comfort than maybe we were raised.
Yes, thank you for that point. And hopefully today's conversation can be a part of helping people become more comfortable about having this conversation. And Michele, we'll go to you last.
Thank you, Emily, for having me on. I'm really excited to be here to talk about this important issue. And I just want to reemphasize things that all the previous speakers had said is so important. And the thing that I would like to bring up is the gender wage gap. So we started off with the gender wage gap in terms of Caitlin Clark, which really brought that to the attention. But when you have a gender wage gap, that also affects what Marcie was talking about, your retirement. You have less money to invest. So that's really important. And then Ashlee was just talking about being more open about salaries and about money. So if a lot of times people who are experiencing a gender wage gap don't know they're making less than the person sitting next to them. right? And so when we talk about the gender wage gap, women are paid on average 84 cents to the dollar what men are paid. And this gap is larger for Black women compared to white men, and larger for Hispanic women and Latino women. So this is both broken down by gender and then intersectionality with other forms of ethnicity. One of the things we just recently passed March 12th, which is Equal Pay Day. So when you try to think about what does it mean to get 84% of what a white male colleague might be getting, it means that when you, on March 12th of the following year, you've now made what that male colleague sitting next to you made at the end of December, right? So you've had to work, almost 3 more months to make the same amount. I've taught negotiation for a long time, and one of the differences between men and women in terms of starting out at that first salary is men tend to negotiate their salary more often than women. And women don't negotiate for multiple reasons. It's not that women don't necessarily know that that negotiating and asking for more is better than less, right? Women know that, but there can be backlash against being more assertive based on stereotypes. And what the research has found coming out of Harvard Kennedy School is that ways for women to express confidence, and we've talked about that, Kara talked about confidence of women expressing, is that when women express confidence in nonverbal ways, so the tone of their voice, the way they dress, the way they stand, they don't get the same backlash for negotiating. Or in addition, when women present what they're negotiating for in terms of a more relational aspect. So being a team player, when you come to a job and negotiate, people should see that as value added. If you can't negotiate in your job, you're not going to be as good an employee. So it's an example of a skill that you need to do well in your job. You asked us about what can organizations and communities do. And one thing they can do is have more courses and opportunities for women to learn to negotiate. So here at Tippie, we're in the business school. Every single person who goes through the business school takes a negotiation course. They learn the number one thing in negotiation is setting high aspirations. The more you ask for and the more you desire, the more you're likely to get, right? You shoot for the stars and you may land on the moon, but it's still more. A lot of times women accept the first offer they're given, and no organization is giving you the best offer in that first situation. And one thing that I remember is I was doing a consulting opportunity one time, and it was a big job, or moderate size, and the person had offered $15,000, and I was like, I was offended, but I didn't walk away from the table, and I just came back with a lot of analysis. And you do have to have that, right? What are the going rates? What are the expenses to do this job? And when I didn't give them another price, but I said, this is too little. These are the things that I would need to do to carry out the job. And the person came back and said, okay, would 75,000 be okay? And what I realized is that I had misheard them. This was a negotiation over the phone. And the first time they had said $50,000, right? And had I heard them correctly, I would not have negotiated as hard. And I didn't know their budget. So a lot of times you don't really know, like, what the full budget is. So you want to negotiate. You also want to research it, right? There's Glassdoor, there's LinkedIn, there's lots of sources that you can go to find what the average salary is. And you don't want to be basing that on your previous salary. So at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of people were moved from government types of jobs to the tech industry, right? The salary base is totally different. And if you just wanted a little bit more than you were making previously, you wouldn't be getting paid what the job is worth. I've talked to numerous people in tech who found out that the person sitting next to them was making $20,000 or $30,000 more than they were making, and they just didn't have that information. So talking about salaries, asking people what their salary is. I know that's uncomfortable, but that type of transparency among women is going to be critical but not just among women, right? You don't want to be the best paid woman. You want to be the best paid person. So you also need to be talking and sharing this information with your male colleagues. If it's uncomfortable to ask, what are you making? You can ask, oh, I'm thinking about asking this salary. Does that sound reasonable or is that too low? Right? They're going to tell you immediately, oh, no, that's way too low. You should be asking for $20,000 or $30,000 more. They're not telling you what they're making, but they're giving you a range that you can then start to work with. I know groups of women who have made a Google sheet and everyone put in what they're getting paid for different speaking opportunities, right? So that they could see what they should be paid. So setting those aspirations high, doing your analysis, these are critical to getting paid what you're worth, but also those activities build your confidence. And the last thing I'm just going to say is always practice with your friends, practice with a colleague, even if you can only practice in front of a mirror. Practice saying that number, because the first time you say that high number should not be in a high stakes negotiation, because it won't roll off your tongue and it won't come out confidently. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you all for getting into some really great topics that I hope we can dig into more. Sonya, I'm curious from your standpoint, looking at some of this data on the survey that you all did during the pandemic, how has the pandemic kind of played a role in these particular financial barriers facing women?
Well, here at the Iowa Insurance Division, we look at everything from an educational standpoint. Education is kind of our bailiwick. We started a program here called Smarter Money. And we did see changes in women's finances during the pandemic. Some women got out of the workforce, but there have been changes. And so during the pandemic, we really worked on that Smarter Money program to tailor it towards women and to offer education. Why would we want a financial education program focused towards women? Because women live longer. We're more apt to be out of the workforce because we're caring for others, as we've discussed. We're more apt to be in charge of our finances, and that could be because we're single, divorced, or widowed. And so we really took that during the pandemic and put a lot of education and work into that Smarter Money program that we started because of the changes that we saw. We thought the education effort was the way to help women with retirement planning as we come through the pandemic.
Great. And Kara, I want to go back to what you talked about in the beginning about family leave in particular. From the research that you've done and what you've seen with employers, what does an ideal policy look like, or what are some of the considerations that employers should be looking at for their employees?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, I will start with there's no one perfect approach to leave. And so it really is about accessing the experts or tools or both that will help an employer understand what is going to be most meaningful, impactful, and valuable for their employee group. So I would say, first and foremost, if you're an employer, talk with your employees. And particularly if you're a small business owner, one of the biggest legs up you have is you actually know every single one of your employees, so you can have a much more deliberate, intentional, and thoughtful conversation, because you're not having to do it in small groups to get a representative set of input and feedback. There's also tools available, and I'll just share one because I'm very familiar with it, and it's called our benefit design tool. If you were to go to principal.com and in the search function type benefit design tool, as an employer, one of the considerations naturally is, what are similar employers like me offering their employees? Because again, benefits are a key way to attract and retain talent. So understanding how, as an employer, you can make sure and meet your employees' needs based on their own input, but then understand what are similar employers, maybe in the same geography, the same industry, with the same number of employees, what are they offering? So that benefit design tool aggregates the data from Principal's 150,000 small businesses that we serve and provides that exact type of information. So that's another data point. And then tap into an expert like a financial professional that can help. But there are really three things I want to make sure that we talk about. It's access, affordability, and advocacy. And I'll explain each of those really quickly. So again, employers, as the most trusted institution in America, are a key avenue to helping their employees get access to benefit programs that will help them feel more financially included and gain access to financial security. So that employer as an access point, but the employer, like I said before, doesn't have to go it alone. There's lots of tools and resources available to help with that. Affordability. I think it's really natural both for employers and for individuals. If individuals are the ones, even through the workplace, that are paying for some of these benefits, the affordability. Our research would say that employers, and often employees as well, significantly overestimate the cost of benefit programs. And so they are much more affordable, and there's unique features and the way that you can design these programs to make sure that they are affordable based on the characteristics of the employee group in question. And then advocacy. From an advocacy perspective, what I really am trying to get at is creating the knowledge and on a repeat basis of what is available through the workplace. So to piggyback off what Sonya was sharing just a few minutes ago, oftentimes there's a natural focus that around open enrollment time once a year, there's a more intentional and deliberate effort to educate employees so that they can make decisions during that window of open enrollment. But I do believe we're doing all of our talent, our employees, a disservice if we just do that one time a year. The reality is, if that's the only time, chances are people are going to forget it when they actually need it. And so what makes sense in the context of the culture of your particular company, or if you're an employee, the company that you work for, for example, set up a lunch and learn. Maybe you tap into the tools that the Iowa Department of Insurance and Financial Services makes available, and you have a discussion over lunch with female colleagues so that you're going through that experience together, and your confidence, your community is all increasing while you're acknowledging and increasing your awareness and knowledge around different financial topics. There's an accountability element there too that can sometimes be helpful. So we don't have to overcomplicate it, but I would say find the right cadence, the right method, and the right length of time to dedicate to these important topics, not just one time a year, but throughout the year, so that they are more top of mind and people are better positioned to make decisions at the point in time when a decision needs to be made.
Thank you. And Ashlee, I'm curious from more of the individual standpoint, when you are advising clients to plan for family leave, what does that look like? What kind of advice are you giving them, or resources are you pointing them to?
You bet. It's a great question. So I think preparing for the things that we don't see coming is critical. And thinking, how's that possible? If we don't know it's coming, how can we possibly plan for it? I'd just like to expand on a little bit of what Sonya and Kara shared. I think for women especially, plan for the contingency that there may be a time in your life when you are unable to earn at your full wage potential, right? Whether that's caring for yourself, a family member, job loss, all of those things are an increasing reality for women because of our demographic realities, right? We're more likely to live longer than men. And so that means we're more likely to be, just as Sonya said, widowed or divorced or single. And so it's critical that we plan for those contingencies rather than be caught flat-footed or trying to repair damage. Preparing is always the better strategy. So in the work that we do with client families, we're always going to try to help them set up a reasonable emergency fund. It's almost the first financial goal that we will tackle when we're working with a family for the first time, before we get to saving for retirement, before we get to debt pay down, before we get down to saving for children's education, before we get to ultimate lifestyle goal and achievement type of objectives. We have to have a strong foundation for if an unexpected income loss or job loss situation occurs. So there's a lot of conventional wisdom out there about what the right amount is to put aside, whether you're in a single earner household or whether you're in a multiple earner household. And I would say a lot of that conventional wisdom is not off the mark. Anywhere from the 3 to 6 month mark of expenses is a reasonable place to start. But there's also kind of this notion out there that, hey, conventional wisdom may be great advice that completely does not apply to you in your individual situation. And so I think that's where the value of talking to a trusted individual who is financially savvy, whether that's an advisor who does this professionally like I do, or just a trusted friend, colleague, confidant who has her financial game together. You might run that across her because number one, you're going to be breaking down those money taboos that I just talked about. Number two, you're going to gain confidence that you're approaching this goal in the right way. And number three, you're preparing for a contingency that is at least reasonably likely for a lot of us as women at some point in our lives. So my first piece of advice is always, do you have an emergency fund? If not, that is priority number one before we hit any of those other long-term financial goals that are critical to feeling confident about your money situation.
Sonya, did you want to add to that?
I did. Thanks, Ashlee, for bringing up the financial professionals. I think it is really important for women to work with a financial professional when they feel comfortable. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't educate yourself as well or first. I wanted to add in there from what Ashlee said about that is to make sure you check with our office to make sure that professional is licensed. You can do that by calling our office, Iowa Insurance Division. If you Google it, our website will come right up. But you want to make sure that that person is licensed. I'm a big believer in, if we're going to talk about financial matters, we also have to talk about fraud as well. And that is always on my radar. And so I just wanted to bring that up to make sure that 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 professional is licensed with our office.
Thank you. Marcie, to switch gears a little bit here, I'd like to know from a small business standpoint, what are you seeing with women entrepreneurs in terms of some of the challenges they face that male small business owners might not face?
So from what I see, and even in the women I've talked to, it is an issue that starts when we talk about wage gap. And, a lot of times businesses are started because people have tucked money away, they had an idea, they know that there has to be some sort of personal investment on top of paying just for everyday life, everyday living. And so the challenge that the women that I am working with are seeing is that they don't have those extra funds. So our program is designed to help women who don't have assets to put up as collateral because some of them are not house owners. Most of them have vehicles. Some of them are, two income households. Some of them are single women. And so that already being behind because of wage gaps, they're trying to reinvest in themselves. And so everything that they're making, they're working typically more than one job because they're working their daytime job on top of starting a business in most cases. And so they're making enough to just take care of their household and be the sole investor in their company as well. Where you see men who, because they're making more, statistically, they're just not as stressed. And we saw that in your initial report that you showed at the beginning, that stress level isn't the same. They're not stressed about taking care of children, like caring for a household plus saving for retirement. So they have typically extra funds because of those extra wages that they can invest. And because they have collateral, now they can go to a bank and get those great commercial loans, where a woman might be forced to do a personal loan, which then comes with short terms, much higher interest, and adds one more challenge on top of that. And so, these women are just pouring everything that they can into the business that they're doing. And, we're thankful to see 10 of them have been and remain to be successful, but we've seen 4 of them just not make it, and have had to close their businesses since starting. So just those extra funds really make a difference when it comes to not just every day, but even being able to go to a bank and say, look, here's why you should invest in me. And we're just not seeing those same situations for women like men experience.
Thank you.
And
And
if
we've
I-
got some great, oh, go ahead, Kara.
Yeah, I was going to build on what Marcie just shared too. Principal has a relationship with an organization called First Women's Bank. So I know this stat blew me away when I first heard it, but female-owned small businesses are growing at twice the rate of male-owned small businesses, but have access to only 16% of the capital. So the First Women's Bank, their mission really is to help address that particular issue. It's a female-founded, female-run organization that lends nationally and really focuses on delivering lending products in coordination with the Small Business Administration. So there's a whole robust infrastructure there, and a level of expertise that, female-owned small businesses can tap into. And so that would be another, building off what Marcie said, for businesses, another avenue to look at might be that one as well, because there is a huge issue in terms of access to capital, and there are organizations that are focused on addressing that exact issue.
Thank you. That's a great point to add.
And I would
wanna
love
get
to add
some of
to,
these-
I would
Oh,
love
yeah.
to just add to what Kara has done. So I've done research on women-owned businesses versus male-owned businesses. And one thing that I find that is very interesting is that women-owned businesses tend to do as well or better than their male counterparts in larger cities. So the kind of stereotypes of women and gender and women as business owners get reduced as there's more women business owners. So in large cities, there are more women business owners, and also we've found just proportional representation. So the more women business owners there are in an area across the different types of businesses, what it does is lenders are then more used to lending to women. Customers are more used to going and working for and buying from women-owned businesses, and that does make a difference. So if you have some choice in location, being in those in those areas where there are more women-owned businesses makes a difference in survival rate.
Yeah, that's really interesting to know. We've got some great questions that are coming in the chat about salary negotiations. So Michele, I'll start with you and I'll see if others want to add in, but we have a question there. If somebody knows that a pay gap exists in their workplace, how might they bring that up with their employer?
So that is definitely a tricky question. There are people who would advise you to first to go to your HR department, but it also depends on your relationship with your boss, right? So talking about, so first you would go in your performance review probably, or at another time, bring up your performance. You want to come in with your book of business, right? What is it that you've accomplished over the years? How have you, over the last year, how have you added to the bottom line? When you're getting emails from clients from other departments saying what a great employee you are, you're saving that email. If they don't copy your boss, you're writing back to that person and say, oh, could you copy my boss on this information, so that you have the information about how what is the salary that you deserve. And then working with your manager, maybe you do need a different job title, right? Maybe they need to create a job title for you that takes into account what you're doing. So that might be, because there's some people who said, and if your company, there's another question that's like, if your company is doing badly, how do you negotiate in that situation? And one of the things that people often forget is your salary is not your full compensation. You are compensated by your time off. They may give you a low interest loan for housing. They may pay for your advanced degree, your MBA. So sometimes if a company is frozen in one area, they can compensate, they can increase your compensation to a level that's appropriate through other means. And so that's something that's often also worth exploring. It is probably not usually a good idea to just go up to your boss and say, hey, Jim, Jim sitting next to me is being paid $20,000 more. I want that money, right? Because there's going to be assumption that there are some skills or some accomplishments that are tied to that. So coming in with your accomplishments and asking kind of open-ended questions like, what would it take for me to get to the salary level? What do you want to see? And then you can start to look together at the accomplishment and they'll say, oh, you really have done these things. Because we sometimes make the assumption that our boss or our company knows everything we're doing. And so when we go into that performance review, they know that information, but that's not the case. It is you're presenting the information. Sometimes people come in with a PowerPoint of the different ways they've impacted the company, what they've accomplished, and also the story you tell. So as a female worker, there's kind of gendered ways sometimes of describing what you've done. You might have worked across two different divisions or departments in your company and allowed them to come to an agreement where there was a lot of strife. Now, the story that could be told about that is, wow, you are such a team player. That was so nice of you to do that, right? And in Iowa, that's going to be what they're saying. Oh, it's so nice. But you can reframe that story. Yes, I do have expertise in conflict resolution. It's one of the things that I find really helpful as I move into a leadership role, right? So then that same exact behavior is coded as, oh, that's a promotable behavior into leadership versus, well, I have a nice employee. And because you're getting complimented on what you're doing, right? And they're saying, oh, it's so great to have you. You're indispensable. You're so nice. It seems like it seems like they should be rewarding you for it. But how they code that is going to matter. So the story you tell about what you're doing for your organization is going to put you in the bucket of great employee versus a promotable leader.
Ashlee, related to that, I'm kind of curious, as Michele mentioned, your salary is not your only compensation. I'm curious to know, what are some of the things that you think women might miss out on in terms of opportunities for financial gains that men are capitalizing on, that you encourage your clients to look into?
Great question. I think a lot of it is role specific. And a lot of it represents you just have to look at every component of the compensation, to Michele's point. Salary is not the be all end all. It's not the top and the bottom line. Your paid time off, your benefits, including short-term disability, long-term disability, life insurance, family life insurance, employer match on a 401k plan, HSA match contributions for health savings accounts, tuition reimbursement or tuition assistance for attaining a designation or professional credential. All of those things have value. And so if you're only looking at the top line of salary or wage per hour, you may be missing out on some of the value that is reflected in your compensation. So, I mean, from my own life, 3 years ago, when I was evaluating a couple of different opportunities, I started with the top line, of course, but then I made an effort to quantify all of the different benefits, which were different among, two different opportunities. And I was able to, come to a calculation to understand, are these really apples to apples opportunities? What are the measurable differences? What are the pros and the cons of each? And that was super helpful in making an informed decision about what the next step in my career was going to be. So I think you have to do your own homework to understand not only your compensation package today, but other opportunities, whether that's internal by taking a new role or making the case for additional title and salary that represent, promotion or advancement, or whether you're going to be evaluating an opportunity outside of your own organization. A lot of times obtaining an opportunity from outside your organization is very motivating to your current employer, right? Because you have, another option that is there for you that you could pursue if you made that choice. And so that can be very compelling if you're trying to approach your existing employer with all of the presentation, and homework that Michele mentioned. That can be, a really nice tool in your toolbox to be able to use to advocate for yourself and be an effective advocate there. Just understanding your total compensation from top to bottom is critical in order to make an informed decision and to not live with regrets, more importantly, after the fact. Once that decision is made, you certainly don't want to be in a position to wish you had made a different decision 2 years down the road or 5 years down the road.
I just want to put a pin in something Ashlee said that was so fabulous. Is one of the things you might negotiate for is a job title. And even if your job title comes with no additional compensation, that title may allow you to move to another organization at a much higher salary level. So sometimes it's a long game.
Well said.
That's a really good point. We are quickly approaching 1 o'clock, which I knew would happen. I want to, before we get to a final takeaway from each of you, one question I want to ask is, what kind of programs and initiatives exist out there that are doing a really good job of helping or surrounding financial empowerment of women? And just want to give an opportunity to highlight some of those. I know Michele is dropping some resources in the chat, but Sonya, why don't we start with you on some resources that people could seek out?
Thank you, Emily. Yes, and I loved that you used the word empowerment. I think that is the most important word when it comes to financial wellness for women. We all have to empower each other to start this journey somewhere, and that was one of the reasons I started the Smarter Money program. Is I wanted to empower women to take control of their finances. We have a website, I mentioned it earlier, it's smarther.iowa.gov, and I can drop that in the chat too. It's a free resource. No one is on the same financial journey. You can go to the website and see where you're at on that financial journey and go from there. But I do think using those resources out there and empowering ourselves and each other is a great place to start, and being a mentor to other women. And that can start in your own home with your daughters and sons, or with friends. I've gone out and spoke to many different women's groups, and it just amazes me. They come up to you afterwards and say, I didn't know where to start. This has helped. I just needed to know where to start. And sometimes you have to walk through that muck to get there, and it can be painful if you sit down to look at your debt or maybe your lack of retirement savings, but you have to face that and start somewhere and get a plan in place. I'm a big believer in pen and paper to get those plans in place, or spreadsheets, whatever it takes. But I will put the resource in the chat there, but I do think that's a great place to start.
Awesome, great. And Kara, do you have any resources that you would recommend people check out?
So I would reference again the one that I mentioned earlier. So this one is geared towards small and mid-sized businesses, so businesses that have fewer than 500 employees, and it's go to principal.com. I will put a link in the chat as well to the benefit design tool. So while not necessarily for an individual, again, going back to employers and the important role that they play in helping provide access to benefits programs, which is a key starting point for so many individuals, that can be a valuable way to gain some insight into how to think about a competitive benefit program, and don't automatically assume that it will be super expensive. Again, most people overestimate the cost and underestimate the value that can come from offering these types of programs to their employees.
Thank you. And we're getting somewhat close on our time. So maybe if there are other resources, I know there's some from our attendees too. If others have resources, feel free to drop those in the chat, and we'll be sure to make sure everybody sees those there, and we can share that out later with folks. So let's go to a final takeaway that you all want to leave people on as we wrap up this discussion. So Marcie, I'll start with you.
Things that I've just learned myself is invest in yourself. And that could mean so many things. It's not just financial, but really everything that everybody has said today. Educate yourself, just making yourself more aware of programs and opportunities. And for the small business owners, don't be afraid to pay yourself and justify why that's in your business plan going to banks. You have value. And so pay yourself first and just educate yourself as much as you can.
Thank you. Michele?
I'll keep it brief because I know we're short on time. I would say negotiate today, negotiate everything. We've talked about salary negotiation here, but the other thing that can derail your pay and your promotion is non-promotable work. So women are asked to do more non-promotable work, and these are office housekeeping things. They're important to the company. You may be organizing things, taking notes at meeting, ordering lunch for an important meeting, but those things are non-promotable. And negotiating, not just if you do them, but are these just tasks that can rotate around the group so everybody gets a chance to do them? Or are you speaking on, diversity panels or something for your organization? And if that's something that's important to the organization, can that be added to your performance review? So that is something that you are getting rewarded for. So you're negotiating not just for your salary, but for how your work is done every day, that it's being equitably split among people. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ashlee?
Number one, break down that money silence. Talk about it. Being open and willing to talk about it despite a deeply held belief that it's wrong or uncomfortable is the first step to having a lot of really meaningful conversations and building your own confidence in finances throughout your life. And it's a great thing to start with children, especially because they're going to start picking up money lessons from you as a parent or grandparent, even if indirectly, kids as young as 3 can start to pick up simple money concepts. So they're always learning from you. Be a model for open conversation. And then building on top of that, embrace your role as an investor. Women are increasingly investing outside of their retirement plans. They're getting involved with brokerage accounts and in the stock market, but we're reluctant to call ourselves investors, which I find really interesting. So embrace that title. I wish we could have spent a little bit more time talking about women's investment behavior because it's really interesting. But get started with that. 7 out of 10 women wish they would have started investing sooner. So today's the day, even if it's a small amount to begin with.
Thank you. Sonya?
Perfect tee up there, Ashlee. Thank you. My thing is just start somewhere. Maybe it's, do you have a budget? Do you have that emergency plan, emergency fund there that Ashlee mentioned earlier? I'm a big believer in the emergency fund. Just start somewhere. Figure where you're at. Build that confidence, because you got to start somewhere to build the confidence, right? It's just like anything else. If you're going to learn to rollerblade, you got to start somewhere, right? And build that confidence. So I can't stress enough, just start and then get to that investor stage. Be an investor. It's the only way you're going to outpace inflation, and just start.
Thank you. Kara?
So very, very quickly, to build off what's been said, you don't have to go it alone. Find your trusted resource, a financial professional, a friend, a colleague, a family member that, maybe by virtue of some education, training, the work they do on a regular basis, they have some knowledge, because it is, to Sonya's point, so critical to just start. And everything else is, will follow after that first step.
Great. Well, I want to thank each of our speakers for being here and sharing your thoughts. I know there was so much more we could have got to, so I hope you've been introduced to these great folks, so you might reconnect with them in the future. And of course, we want to thank our audience for tuning in today. If you've enjoyed this conversation, we encourage you to join us for our next Fearless Focus, where we're going to focus on childcare. It's being held Thursday, June 20th from noon to 1. And on October 3rd, we're going to focus on leadership and mentorship. If you've got story ideas or feedback on today's event, please reach out to us. If you're interested in supporting work like Fearless and other work produced by our locally owned media company, becoming a business record member or sponsor helps us continue to do work like this. Reach out to Chris Cohen if you are interested in advertising and sponsorship opportunities. And finally, we want to leave you with a call to action. We hope you'll consider ways that you can advance the financial empowerment of women, and you heard lots of great examples of that today. Thank you so much for attending, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.